Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, it is Malcolm used to say friends and enemies. It is I, the Catawba Valley Aboriginal. I wanted to pontificate on reparations as far as the dollar value. Recently, Marianne Williamson, who I personally like, I think she's a little pie in the sky, but she brings or brought to the table what I would expect a woman to bring to the table. And that is not demeaning of women, that is just recognition that real women understand the value of caring, of compassion, of these intangible qualities that men often can't seem to get their minds around. I was struck, I am constantly struck by Donald Trump's public admissions. He did an interview with Laura Graham in which he bragged that they took the oil. Well, that's an international war crime. If you admit that you invade a country or go into a country to take their resources, that's a war crime. And he admitted it because he thinks like Archie Bunker or somebody who thinks that he has Twitter brain. He thinks this shit you come up with off the tip of your tongue is valid because it sounds good. He's admitting to being a thief and a robber and a war criminal. And then he follows that up saying that he's sending troops to Saudi Arabia somewhere because they're paying him $500 million. They're paying us a lot of money. Well, you've just turned your whole military into a bunch of mercenaries, people who fight for pay. I remember debating somebody. I don't know what platform it was or what job I was at, because, it had something to do about this. Thank you for your service. Every time people see a military man, it's thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And that is because the presumption is that you're thanking them because they perform some kind of service for you or for your country. But if the reality is that you're just a bunch of mercenaries, then it feels like a stick up. It feels like if, say, the state of Alabama wanted to pay for federal troops to come in and shut down the black section of Birmingham, and they ponied up enough money, Trump would be in agreement to it. That's what it feels like to me. They're mercenaries. When you fight for pay, for profit, without a national interest or without a net benefit to the nation, you're a mercenary force. And that is dangerous. That means your services go to the highest bidder. Anyway, that's what we got now. At least with Marianne Williamson, we'd had a different demonstration. I didn't expect her to win or to get very far, and she didn't. But I was glad she was in the race because she's the first white woman I've heard come out of her mouth with any kind of number for reparations. She probably thought $500 billion was a lot. It's not even close. But it's the thought that counts sometimes, because when people wrap their minds around the actual numbers, let me give you an example. I think I might have done this on an earlier video. There is a guy, a white professor from the University of Connecticut in Hartford, who I saw. He was either on television or on a platform, who said he had done a study and written a book about the contributions of slaves to the economy of the United States of America. And he took the average wages of free people between 1776 and 1865. And he calculated based on the amount of slaves or the number of slaves. I think he took in consideration the fluctuation in the population of slaves and how much their value or the value of their work was. And this is at a time period in which the effective hourly wage ranged between 2 and 3 cents an hour. So it's not like he was going back and translating a $15 hour minimum wage. But anyway, he comes up with a number of $14 trillion. That is the economic contribution of black labor to the United States of America between 1776 and 1865. Now, when I say black, I'm not saying African, because I realize that we received a lot of Africans in the transatlantic slave trade, but very little in comparison to other places. Haiti, for example, received 1 million African slaves alone. We had less than half that number of Haiti. That doesn't, so the Caribbean in total received a lot more African slaves than the continental United States of America. And when you compare it to Brazil and other South American nations, it's not even close. So I've seen a Emory University study that says that through 1870, approximately, but not quite 400,000 Africans have been sent to the United States of America. And I break that down in another video called Facetiously 5% African. Based on a comparison with Haiti, I did a video saying that the black man in America may only be 5% African. It was facetious, but it was fact-driven. Now, I just took liberties with statistics. I know statistics. I learned statistics from Bill Spriggs, who was a former economist with the Bush administration. He's been on Crossfire. I know statistics, and Mr. Spriggs would probably slap me across the head if he saw that video. But I'm just saying that there's a case to be made that being black does not equal being African in America, particularly when you consider the fact that African slaves were added to an existing system of slavery, of enslavement of Indians, natives, defeated people. The Cherokee, for example, made several complaints to colonial authorities that British slave traders were paying rival tribes like the Catawba, the Congaree, the Yamasee and the Westos and the Catawba to make raids on their villages to take slaves. So the slave trade was up and popping before the first Africans before Africans became a big part of it. And slavery was abolished in 1808, more than 50 years before the end of the Civil War in the United States of America. Not slavery, but the importation of Africans was abolished. So when you see a big population in slaves, when you do the decade by decade thing, what you tend to find is a concurrent conquest of Indian territory. So there are a lot of melanated people on the planet. Everywhere you go, you got dark melanated people. America's no exception. And the oldest bones in America are so-called Negroid. So to say that we're all African is unsubstantiated, except in propaganda. But I digress. $14 trillion was the contribution to the United States economy. There was through 1865. In 1865, with the passage of the 14th Amendment, not the 13th, 13th supposedly ended chattel slavery. What it actually did was It ended personal ownership of slaves and made slavery state property. That's why these prisons have property of on a lot of their stuff. Your state property if you break the law or convicted of a crime, whether you break the law or not. So the 14th Amendment, though, made citizens of 4 million black people, most slaves, but some free. Even the free ones weren't considered slaves until the 14th Amendment. Why do we say that? Because according to the Dred Scott decision of 1857, not only did the Negro have no rights which the white man was bound to respect, but, says Roger Taney, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, who wrote the majority opinion, that the founders had no intention of giving citizenship to the Negro. So in other words, whether slave or free, you weren't a citizen until the 14th Amendment. That's why I refer to us as 1865 as the same people that we call American descendants of slaves, foundational black Americans. It just takes the semantics out of it, unless you know that 1865 was a ethnogenetic moment for the black man or for the United States of America, because that's when our ethnicity was created by the ratification of that amendment, because that's when we became citizens. Okay? All right. So, 4 million slaves, $14 trillion contribution. So the collective impact of those 4 million enslaved people, newly freed people, and their ancestors within the chattel slavery system of the United States of America was $3.5 million each. Yes. $3.5 million each. $3.5 million each. That's 4 million. We are tenfold today. So 40 million people, and some of that, in my opinion, and I think it's going to end up being confirmed that the distribution of the money, once the dollar figures settle on, is going to be based on how many slaves in 1865 were still alive. How many people became citizens in 1865? I believe that's going to be. And then the more that you can trace your heritage to, the more. So if $14 trillion was decided on as a figure for 4 million enslaved people that became free, or 4 million Negroes that became citizens in the United States, and there are 40 million of us left, at a minimum, someone who had nothing but Ados lineage would receive at minimum $350,000. I'm just saying. And probably more, because after 1980, we received an infusion from the Caribbean and from Africa. Those are the people a lot of us are beefing with now. A lot of Pan-Africans are anti-ADOS for no good reason. A lot of immigrants are anti-ADOS for understandable reasons, because they are immigrants and they are here to replace you, American descendant of slavery. Even though they have a nationality and we don't. Even though they have a country and we don't. For some reason, we're the bad guys for trying to proclaim and promote our ethnicity as a class of people with a traceable and quantifiable claim for reparations. We don't complain about CARICOM and all this other kind of stuff they got going on. But for some reason, they feel free. They have made a living being African Americans, having no skin in the civil rights game, no lineage to the American cotton fields and tobacco fields and mines and lash. They don't have any connection to that, but they take the benefits of it. They enjoy the benefits of it because white people think we're all one big Negro. And what ADOS does is lets the world know that no, we are separate and unique in the United States of America and in the world. And if we don't promote that uniqueness among ourselves, and nobody else will. So let the haters hate. We're gonna keep striving to make everybody aware that we are not just Africans. We are African Americans. We're not just African Americans, because African American is a made up term. There's no proof that we are more African than American. There's a lot of evidence that we are more American than African, or at least as much so. And when you add in the fact that Africa rejected our ancestors by selling them to the white man, by putting them on the boat, never coming to rescue, never sending aid or comfort, then I'm really offended by the term Africa. Africa basically means Homo sapiens. That means Europeans and Asians are also Africans. So why are we the only ethnic group in the world that has African in their name, Mr. African American? Anyway, time's running short. I'm out. Peace. God bless you. Live long and prosper.